Cathay Pacific to bring back former workers and recruit new blood to cope with a business rebound. Leave Home Safe app users can store 8 more vaccine passes onto the app. And in Japan, the state funeral of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. As the city's hotel quarantine measures was finally lifted for inbound travelers, the aviation industry is expected to see a major business rebound. But airlines, including the city's flagship carrier Cathay Pacific, are struggling to bring back former workers and recruit new blood. Jackie Lin spoke to an industry representative.
After more than 2 years of hiatus, travel is finally taking off again, with a long sigh of relief from the aviation sector.
We experienced an extremely challenging time in the last 2 years. We started to see some light at the end of the tunnel.
Next month, Cathay will also roll out 200 extra pairs of passenger flights. But what proves more challenging is bringing back the manpower. The company still hasn't reached half of their target of hiring 4,000 more frontline workers.
In the next few months or years, we will enter into a big competition for manpower, be it the aviation industry or the retail, the food and beverage, the hotels and all that. So we need to open up new sources of labor from the nearby areas like the Great Bay Area.
And what about local talent?
The local talents definitely is always the higher priority, but there's simply not enough.
Tong says with the opening of the third runway, the industry needs 50,000 more workers. Another challenge, regional rivals. At its worst, Hong Kong trailed behind Singapore more than 10 times in passenger throughputs.
Singapore is already opened up completely. So Singapore is now back to 70 or 80% of where they used to be, and we are still about 10% of where we used to be. So there's a big gap. In the long term, I'm still very confident 0+3 is the first step. We hope that it becomes 0+0.
James Tong also told us the aviation industry in Hong Kong and Asia still needs some catching up to do with the passenger load and flight capacity. He expects they will return to their pre-pandemic levels in around 2024 to 2025. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Chief Executive John Lee said more activities in the city will be allowed to resume depending on the development of the 0+3 medical surveillance arrangement. But he slammed acts of non-compliance by some people, saying that would affect the city's anti-epidemic efforts.
A day after the city replaced hotel quarantine with 3 days of medical surveillance for incoming travelers, Chief Executive John Lee said the operation was relatively smooth.
I'm very happy to see there were many happy faces, a lot of hugging and greeting, which really impressed my heart sentimentally.
But the CE stressed his administration must be cautious so that there will not be a rebound of infections. He criticized some 40 red coat holders who broke quarantine rules and left their isolation premises, as well as the 9% of people who failed to comply with compulsory testing order every month. That's on top of some 25,000 vaccine exemption certificates that were issued without medical consultation.
If they don't do this, the success of the 0+3 plan will not be as effective because there may be a rebound of cases. We have to condemn this non-compliance because it affects every one of us. It affects my plan of looking at possible new areas where we can allow more free activities.
This month alone, nearly 200 people were each fined $10,000 for not complying with the compulsory testing order. Lawmaker Rebecca Chen said she hopes people subject to the compulsory testing mandate can receive reminders through the Leave Home Safe app. She added some housing estates receive the testing order 2 to 3 times a month, making it tiresome for residents. Meanwhile, amid growing calls urging for the medical surveillance period to be scrapped to attract international travelers to visit Hong Kong, John Lee said he will monitor the situation. The CE said he is confident exhibitions and business travels will return to Hong Kong gradually.
Hong Kong's Leave Home Safe app will allow users to store 8 more vaccine passes onto the app. The update will take effect on Friday, the day that children as young as 5 will be required to present their vaccination records before entering premises like restaurants. Christy Khan with details.
Prior to extending the vaccine pass requirements to cover children from 5 to 11 years old, the government announced there will be a system update for the Leave Home Safe app. App users will be allowed to upload more vaccination records, including those of relatives aged 65 or above, children who are 15 years old or younger, people with disabilities, and individuals who are authorized by the government. To add additional records, users can select electronic vaccination and testing record, then scan the QR codes on the paper vaccination records. A maximum of 8 additional vaccine passes can be uploaded to the contact tracing app, but the app will not record the visiting records of those 8 companions. Some parents welcome the system update, saying it is more convenient. This resident says it is better to store the children's vaccination records to smartphones to minimize the possibility that they will forget to bring the paper records with them. Meanwhile, the city reported more than 3,600 new COVID infections, recording a slight drop from the day before. 18 positive cases were reported across 6 residential care homes. More than 50 residents had to undergo quarantine. More than 400 schools had reported some 690 new COVID infections. Among them, 21 schools had to suspend some in-person classes for a week. And the city logged 6 more COVID-related deaths today. Christy Khan, TVB News.
One more doctor was arrested for allegedly improperly issuing COVID-19 vaccination medical exemption certificates. In this latest case, more than 3,000 fraudulent certificates were said to have been issued over a 4-month period, involving up to $15 million in certification fees. Authorities also announced that some 20,000 certificates issued by 7 doctors will be deemed invalid starting October 12. Police raided a clinic on Lai Chi Kok Road in Prince Edward at 9 a.m. today and arrested a 65-year-old man who is believed to be Dr. Fu Yunlong. There, officers seized patient records, a laptop computer and $50,000 in cash. Police say the man issued almost 3,200 COVID vaccination medical exemption certificates from February to May, with each certificate costing between $3,000 and $5,000. 6 doctors have been arrested so far on suspicion of improperly issuing medical exemption certificates. According to police sources, among those arrested, Dr. Wong Ping Leung, whose clinic is in Chai Wan, allegedly profited the most by selling 6,600 certificates that involved some $20 million. So far, 22 people have also been arrested on suspicion of purchasing such certificates. A suspected child abuse case was reported at the Po Leung Kuk Residential Childcare Service. Chief Executive John Lee today said the government will go ahead with plans to conduct more inspections to protect children from possible abuse.
We take such things very seriously, and we are already trying to amend the relevant legislation. I hope we can expand the scope of inspections. For instance, we may have independent and trusted bodies in order to boost our capacity of regular inspections. I'm going to ask the Labour and Welfare Bureau to look into this so that whether we can enhance our ability to inspect and check on these institutions.
The suspected child abuse case was reported yesterday, with a carer at the Po Leung Kuk Residential Childcare Service allegedly mistreating 6 toddlers by allegedly pushing them onto soft play mats multiple times. The case was handed over to the police 4 days after the group found out about the allegations. Po Leung Kuk said the 33-year-old female carer, who was still on probation, had been suspended from duty immediately. Japan today held its first state funeral for a former premier in 55 years to commemorate the life of Shinzo Abe, who was killed at a campaign rally in July. However, the decision to grant Abe a state funeral remains controversial with the Japanese public. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's state funeral got underway at 2 p.m. local time at the Nippon Budokan Hall in Tokyo. Around 4,300 people, including current Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and US Vice President Kamala Harris, were in attendance. Abe's ashes were carried into the hall by his widow Akie to music from a military band and the sound of the honor guard salute. Inside the Budokan, a large portrait of Abe draped with a black ribbon hung over a bank of green, white and yellow flowers. In the center of the display was a Japanese flag made of flowers. A moment of silence was held, followed by a retrospective look at Abe's political life and speeches by leading ruling party figures. Among those to pay tribute to Abe were Prime Minister Kishida and Yoshihide Suga, Abe's successor and Kishida's predecessor as Japan's leader. The state funeral for Abe, who received a private funeral days after his assassination in July, was the first for an ex-premier since the 1967 ceremony for former Prime Minister Shigeru Ishida. Kishida said the state funeral was a way of honoring Abe's achievements, as well as to demonstrate Japan's commitment to standing up for democracy. However, the decision to hold the state funeral has proved divisive within Japanese society due to Abe's controversial legacy. This could be seen in the contrasting reactions from the public ahead of the service. In the morning, thousands of Abe supporters gathered at designated spots near the state funeral venue to lay flowers and pay their respects to the former leader. However, in one part of downtown Tokyo, protesters gathered waving signs and chanting "No state funeral." Abe was an unapologetic nationalist who implemented a muscular defense posture, which some criticized as too hawkish.
Back locally, a magistrate ruled today that there's a prima facie case against the 6 defendants in the trial related to the now-defunct 612 Humanitarian Relief Fund. Among the defendants are Cardinal Joseph Zen, former lawmaker Margaret Ng, and singer Denise Ho. They were charged with failing to apply for registration or exemption from registration within the specified time in connection with the fund. A senior superintendent of the police licensing unit told the court that the unit had never received any application from the fund, while all societies must register 1 month after their establishment. But the Defense Counsel said societies such as the Chief Executive's campaign office have never been registered as well. The magistrate said that has nothing to do with the case and urged both sides to explain the term society, as it would have an impact on the community. The trial has been adjourned until October 26th. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.